Okay, so last but not least, we have Dr. Grace Sturdivant with us here for episode 100. Thank you so much for partaking in the Future Ear Radio podcast up until this point. You were on episode 93 back in May, which was a fantastic conversation, really delving into the business of hearing conservation and your AuD Pro Technologies business. So wanted to bring you on as the closer here to maybe give some final thoughts about this whole theme of like, what's on your mind, what's on your radar, what excites you about the hearing healthcare space here in August of 2022?
Thank you so much. It's really an honor. I didn't know I was the closer.
Yep, best for last.
I hope this can be interesting and entertaining and motivating. But I was so excited to get your email that you were going to be doing this and asking, what we're most excited about for the future of our field. And I am very optimistic about the future. And I'm optimistic for a number of reasons. The audiology field, I feel like we're in a time of uncertainty for a lot of providers. However, I'm very optimistic. Like I say, AuD Pro, as we talked about on the other podcast, was born out of a passion project to get out in front of the problem and to prevent and delay the problems before they start, before intervention with hearing aids is needed. And what I'm finding is that younger and younger generations of people who are involved in high risk, noisy activities are motivated and interested in protection and preventative care. And the stigma is minimizing as my clients get younger and younger. And I have, I'm thinking of a guy who saved up and is working his first job, and he's working with a railroad. And he was willing to sacrifice and put money aside for quality hearing protection because he sees it as that important. And I'm very thankful that with AuD Pro and with our growth, it's given us a voice to be able to reach more and more people in the public where they are before they would have ever sought audiology care in the beginning. And we are able to make referrals to local points of care for those clients for the future so that they will seek intervention with hearing aids much sooner than they would have otherwise, because I want to start people with that local point of care before the problem comes about. So to prevent and delay, but then to intervene early. And so that's truly what has me the most excited, is that I believe that audiologists can and will be the gatekeepers to hearing healthcare. And I believe that in supporting each other and referring to each other for our own specialties, we can all rise together in the public perception and be the experts and be the people that the consumer wants to consult with before they make any sort of a purchase, whether it's protection, personal audio, or hearing technology.
Yeah, that's just really, really well said. And I like every aspect of that, from we can do more from a hearing care perspective, like there's a lot more opportunity around these semi quasi relegated areas of the scope, like hearing conservation, that I think it's not as if it hasn't really been present. It's just not been prioritized. And I think
Right.
that, what's been a very big revelation for me is with this podcast, what I've really learned is how you can actually commercialize some of these additional aspects of audiology. And with you specifically, it's the business of hearing conservation. And I just think that it speaks to what makes me so excited about this, what's trending right now in this industry, which is, I think it's this reawakening of we need to practice the entirety of the scope. And it doesn't mean that, if you're a private practice owner, that you need to do all the things that we've talked about on this episode, from, auditory processing disorder or balance or, tinnitus, hearing conservation. I think that the fact is that there's a lot of other ways you can position your value, and you can take bits and pieces of it. So you don't have to have a whole practice that's entirely devoted to hearing conservation. It can just be one element of it, or you partner with a specialist like yourself so that you're mutually there's reciprocity. It's like I'm sending you people, and you're sending people through my doors. So I think it speaks to just this theme of practicing audiology fully and understanding how to make money doing all these other things, knowing that
Definitely.
it's going to come back around in a way. I think that like hearing aids will still very much be a thing, but as
Right.
soon as you elevate the other things, I actually think it makes the hearing aid sale that much easier.
Oh, hands down, absolutely yes. We as audiologists have rightfully so become very wary of anything that even looks or smells like a third party. And we've become so driven by what the hearing aid manufacturers are handing to us. And I have nothing, hearing aids, there's such a value to those practices. And we know that that is a growing industry. And there's going to need to be more and more people who are focused on being the experts in hearing aid technology, knowing what's the latest, greatest, and then how to work that particular software. While I want to encourage every young audiologist to become fully trained in the full scope of practice, I also encourage audiologists to find their niche, to find what they love and what they're best at. Maybe it's a number of different things. Maybe you do have a multifaceted practice where you can focus on hearing protection and hearing aids, or vestibular and electrophysiology monitoring. There's so many things we can do in this awesome field that we're in. And so I don't think everybody needs to do everything. One thing that I'm trying to do with AuDO Pro is just send quality referrals. We are in no way a third party program. We don't want anything to do with your hearing aid sales. We simply want to start a local point of care and get people into proper hearing protection, and then set them up with a trusted referral to, this is going to be your go-to audiologist in your own backyard going forward. And in that way, we support each other and we raise each other up. It also takes the pressure off of those practices to be the experts in hearing protection. If you're focused on hearing aids, what I'm trying to do with AuDO Pro is be like this marketing arm that gets out in front of the problem and sends people to your practice. And then we take the time and energy to research all the products and tech specs and figure out exactly what this hunter needs according to how he hunts, what gun he shoots. I mean, that's a lot to try to take on if you're trying to run a hearing aid practice. So all that to say, whether it's the hearing protection specialty or whether it's tinnitus or balance or auditory processing, let's eliminate the sense of competition, refer to one another, and build each other's practices up. And in doing so, we elevate the public perception of the audiologist in the community as the experts in our given field. And then we all rise together.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'll use a personal example here of how you and I have worked together now. A friend of mine, he was down shooting and he wasn't wearing ear protection. And long story short, he basically gave himself tinnitus and a little bit of a temporary hearing loss. And so he comes to me and he's like, "Hey, I know you do a podcast and I think you're in the hearing care industry or whatever." And he's like, "Do you have an ear doctor that I can go to about this stuff?" And so I contacted you. I was like, "Do you have anyone within your AuDO Pro network in the St. Louis area?" Sure enough, you did. You sent me to you basically connected me with this group. So I sent my friend there. And I think that's such a testament of like, first of all, now he knows like he has an audiologist in the St. Louis area, which is huge because he knows that for life. He wasn't aware of that there were like various degrees of hearing protection that you can get custom ear molds. And, it's like it wasn't like there was any objection to it. It was truly ignorance. So you've just created another candidate of somebody that might be interested in this. And then last, it's like, this I think is the opportunity is that symbiotic relationship of like, you help to drive people into the clinic. They establish that patient for life. They can do tests on him. They can provide the impression. Like there's billable things right off the bat, not to mention the long lasting relationship that you can establish. And so I look at this and I see, okay, so this is just a very specific isolated example of hearing conservation, but you can see the exact same pattern playing out where it's for vestibular. It's like I need somebody within the St. Louis network that does balance and for cognition, like down the line, APD, tinnitus. And so I think that that's what's so cool about this is that like you're gonna, I think, see a lot of opportunities for audiologists to work collaboratively with themselves to identify who is a specialist within this geography,
Right.
because we know that more and more of the patient acquisition, I think, is going to happen online. It's going to be finding you through Instagram, finding you through YouTube, finding you through whatever. And so it's a matter of like, how do you connect them to local care? And that
Right.
is like, that to me is where there's tremendous opportunity that I think, are at day one of tapping into, because it's this beautiful combination of social influence mixed with networks that you can connect
Mhm.
one provider to another. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Absolutely. And, as that example that you gave, I don't necessarily stand to gain anything from that referral. It's just the fact that I appreciate and respect what this practice in your area is doing. And I'm more than happy to send that patient to them, whether or not that patient knows my name at the end of the day or not. And I think that a lot of times what I've run into with some clinics is this sense of competition of, are you going to try to steal my sale, or are they going to try to circumvent? And it's all just silly at the end of the day. We all got into this profession, I dare say, because we wanted to help people with their hearing. We wanted to help people with the ability to connect with the world and with people through hearing. We wanted to help people restore that. And it's like we need to get back to the basics. I know it sounds kind of Pollyanna, but truly, if we are in the business of helping and bringing hearing healthcare to people, then there should be less of a focus on who gets the sale, more of a focus of building that equity and trust with each other, so that we can send those referrals back and forth. Because you know what, that practice that we sent that referral to, I'm just a firm believer of what goes around comes around. And I know that they will in the future be willing, and I'll be more at the front of mind for these great referrals, that they'll be telling patients, hey, you need to talk with Grace with AuD Pro, because she might be able to build out something special for you for hearing protection in this unique situation. You know, eliminate the competition, build each other up. The public is eager for what we have to offer. And if we can get out in front of it, then we will have a highly sustainable long-term field of experts in hearing care.
Again, like, just think about the example that I described. He didn't know what an audiologist was. He thought it
Right.
was like an ear doctor. And, so it's like, I think we shortchange just the sheer magnitude of the amount of people that need these services, but don't know
Mm-hmm.
where to go. And I
Right.
think that this is why I think it's really important that you have really visible people that are the face of these kind of like different tangents of audiology. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had a bunch of these people on the podcast, like you, where it's like, I think that you yourself are doing a tremendous job of bringing awareness to the importance of hearing conservation, what goes into that, how it all works, what kinds of offerings are available to
Mm-hmm.
people. And to your point, we, I think, need to take the long-term view here. Like, I look at this and I think what you did there throughout this thing is so you basically established a really good local person that I could send people to. So
Mm-hmm.
my one friend, he's going to now know, okay, this is a great ear doctor, and
Right.
he's going to be able to speak to that, to his whole network of people. And so you have
Mm-hmm.
no idea the amount of residual business that's going to
Right.
come from this. And I guarantee that it will, that a
Because
single sale will
he
pale in
he had
comparison.
that issue because of an episode when he was shooting guns, right?
Mhm.
Well, odds are he shoots guns with other people who shoot guns
Right.
recreationally.
Yeah.
And that whole community of people who likely doesn't know what an audiologist is or where to turn for these issues, just like it is exponential. And those are all people who will need hearing aids, and who we don't want to wait the average of 7 to 10 years from the time they're really feeling the hit of a problem to when they walk through the doors of a clinic. So if we work together, we can change that. And if we focus on our expertise and the education that we can provide to the consumer, the sales will come. I'm a firm believer, education, expertise first, and then you are going to be the trusted source for the sale of the products that are going to pay your bills.
And think about the way that it expands and diversifies the patient demographic. As
Mhm.
soon as you start to move out from under just being pigeonholed is as a hearing aid dispenser, salesperson, whatever you're perceived as by the public, you start to move out of that. Suddenly, like this is something that feels a lot more approachable and suitable for a young person who
Mhm.
might be the only reason they would come to you is from a preventative standpoint. They want to just better
Right.
understand this. They want to get fitted with custom earplugs. So what does that do? Again, it's all
Right.
about like this aspect of building a network of patients for today and then patients for
Mhm.
tomorrow,
Mhm.
knowing that there's so much residual patient acquisition that's going to come along with that just simply by
Right.
word of mouth within their market. So I just
Yeah.
feel like we're at a really good and interesting time right now where I think the industry as a whole is recognizing that we can be so much more. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if as this is all happening, like simultaneously, that like the hearing aid sales have never been stronger because I
Mhm.
don't think it detracts from hearing aids in any way. I think it
No.
simply is re-elevating everything else to a similar playing field so that we're
Right.
prioritizing everything.
Right.
Yeah,
And there's a general distrust, at least with my own little sample size of people that I speak to about hearing aids. There's a distrust of the hearing aid industry, and for whatever reason you want to buy into. But I think that's all the more compelling evidence as to why we as audiologists have to value and charge for our services and not strictly rely on those products. We have expertise that people are willing to pay for, and there is a significant value with that. And and unbundling those services, I'm such a strong proponent of, because let's bring that sticker shock price tag down. Let's demand it from the manufacturers, and then let's separate and recoup some of our expenses through billing for our services. um, it,
totally.
it's there's got to be a shift, and I do think the shift is coming. And I think that when audiologists are really brave enough, it's scary to think of separating that out and trying to tell someone, we're not trained as salespeople. We're trained to be hearing care experts. But if you're not willing to sell and you're not willing to value your services and your expertise, then you're left just with raising the prices on the hearing aids. That doesn't do anybody any favors.
Like I feel like a good example of this is for a long time, it's been common to provide a hearing test free of charge, which
Mhm.
I think on the surface it's like feels altruistic and all that, but I think that
Mhm.
part of the issue is that the bait and switch in the public's mind tends to come from this feeling of like I came in, I got tested, and then now you're saying that I have to. My only solution is this, X amount of device. And I
Right.
think that, what audiology, I think, could and should do is be really upfront about the expectation to say
Mhm.
that you are going to be charged for my time for my services, but the reason being is I'm going to give you a medical evaluation. It might
Right.
transcend just the single pure tone audiometry test, and it might really get into all of the other things that you can glean in that initial patient visit. And so I think that it goes back to what you're saying, which is like, how do you properly monetize your time? Well, it starts with setting the expectation up front and saying, I'm different than
Right.
the other place that provides this for free. I know that if that's what you want, then that exists. And like, by all means, that's great. But the reason that I'm charging for this is in lay that out. And I think that
Mhm.
that's so much of it is just expectation setting.
Well, and then maybe what's best for the patient is not a traditional hearing aid from one of the top manufacturers. One thing, I don't know if you've had Heather on with Tuniversity, but
Yeah.
and what she's doing, I love what they're doing with Tuniversity. And the fact that they're providing education for audiologists to be able to expand their practice beyond the traditional hearing aid with other products that may meet the client's needs better and at a better price point that suits them. It pained me to see patients when I was in the medical setting who were scraping together all the money they could to try to get into an entry level hearing aid pair. And we are seeing more and more options that are coming in at lower price points that are not your traditional hearing aid. And I don't think we need to be afraid of those. I think that with the proper counseling and the proper education for the patient, some of those products can be used very responsibly to meet the basic needs of patients who simply cannot afford traditional hearing aids. And we need to have more to offer than just that.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that it's really just like, does your business model line up with that? Where, if the traditional business model is you make a profit margin on the device sale itself, you're probably pretty conditioned to high profit margins. And I think that, with these OTC devices and these things that are coming down the pike, there might not be much profit at all. And so it kind of begs the question of like, should you even be charging? Like, would it make more sense to sell these things at cost, but make it very clear and say, you are going to pay me for my time and my services, and just make
Right.
them aware that, like, look, you can go your own way and you can do this yourself by all means, or
Mhm.
you can, basically just set that boundary of like, this is
Right.
what my expertise costs. And it doesn't have to be exorbitant or anything like that,
Right.
but I think it's this idea of just like kind of reclaiming your value and
Mhm.
saying,
Yes.
especially as an audiologist who has the AUD, who's gone through all the time and effort to get that credential, you want to make sure that that thing's valued. And
Right.
I'm not saying to just artificially jack up the prices of people coming to see you, but it's understanding what's your break even rate, and
Right.
what level of profitability do you want to make, and does it have to necessarily even come from the device sales?
Right. I don't think it does. I was on the phone just yesterday with a practice in Palm Beach, California, looking to refer a patient for ear mold impressions. Now, this is a patient that is in the US for 1 week. He lives in Australia and was trying to avoid all the international shipping fees and hassle. And so while he's in the States just this week, I'm trying to get him an appointment to get his ear mold impressions made. So this is not a potential long-term client for this practice. They know that. I was very transparent about that. And I said, so what would you charge for a visit to strictly make the ear mold impressions and hand them to him at the conclusion of the visit? And I'm hesitant as to whether I should say the amount or not, but I respect it. It was a hefty amount. And they said that is the minimum price of a visit, of an appointment on our schedule. It's going to carry this minimum price. And it's a heck of a lot more than what all the other 250 practices currently are charging for ear mold impression services only. But honestly, I respect it. And I
Yeah.
said, I will pass this along to the client. And if it's a deal breaker, just know that this is a lot more. But I respect that that is what you need for that appointment slot. And I honestly think more of us need to be doing the same.
Yep, I couldn't agree more with that. I think it again is just a matter of figuring out what does your I think it's just kind of like putting pen to paper and figuring out,
Right.
doing the calculations and figuring out, looking at your profit and your P&L, and kind of just looking at the guts of your business and figuring out,
Right.
what do I need to make in order to be profitable. And I think that what I think is one of my big takeaways from this whole episode 100 is like, on a 40-hour work week, there's more and more types of blocks that you can set on your calendar. And
Mhm.
that to me is really exciting. And I think that what we're going to have to figure out over the next few years, that has really, I think we've made giant strides already, is figuring out, how do you properly monetize all of those new blocks.
Right.
And I think that's the devil in the detail that we're going to have to figure out, is like, I think as an industry, it's becoming really apparent that there are some really exciting new services that you can provide, or existing services that you can elevate.
Right.
But it's, I think, now a matter of figuring out, well, how do you properly monetize all this in a way that it's not egregious? It's just
Right.
simply, this is what my fair market value is.
Well, and there's also a big challenge that comes with that. If you're going to charge a premium for your services, you have to be committed to the continual study and your own continual education and adherence to best practices and more. If you're going to charge for those services, you can't just do down 10, up 5, SRT, and then hit automatic program on those hearing aids.
Mhm.
You've got to actually bring the value. and take the extra steps and provide the expertise that's worthy of that dollar amount. And that is something that, you know, when I was so appreciative of my time working in the academic medical center, where I had fourth year externs working with me. And it was always interesting to ask them, how were you just taught how to do this? What speech and noise measurements were you doing in your program? What outcome measures were you taught? And learning from each other. And so if you have an opportunity to bring students into your practice, it's a great opportunity for you to ask them questions and for it to be very symbiotic, where you have the experience to convey to them and your tried and true methods. But then it's also very worthwhile to hear about what these students are learning, and then try to bring some of that into your own practice. And in doing so, it challenged me to stay on top of things, because when that student said, "Why are you doing it that way?" I had to be able to answer it.
Yeah.
And that's something that takes a lot of work, and we're busy and we're trying to make ends meet and we're trying to get the charting done, and it's very laborious. But I do challenge all of us as audiologists to stay at the top of our game and continue to learn. You can't stop learning, and you can't take the easy way out. There's an easy way to fit hearing aids and there's a right way to fit hearing aids. It's very different.
I love it. That's like a mic drop moment right there. Perfect way to kind of wrap up episode 100. Always be learning. Keep challenging yourself, I think, to just kind of figure out, how do you innovate a little bit? How do you incrementally improve your, whatever setting you're working in? Because I think that the thing I've really taken away from these first 100 episodes is, like, the opportunity exists, and it exists in a variety of different ways, but ultimately it kind of boils down to, are you willing to pursue those things? And it usually involves getting out of your comfort zone, because you're going to be uncomfortable, because you're probably learning a lot. And it takes the ability to kind of shake away the complacency and be like, as comfortable as I might feel right now, chances are I need to be pushing myself a little bit, so that in a couple of years from now, I feel just as secure as I might feel today, because I've basically future-proofed myself in a variety of different ways.
I agree.
Awesome, Grace. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on episode 100. And that concludes this mega episode of Future Ear Radio for, I guess, the first season of the podcast.
That's awesome. You're doing great work. And I appreciate you doing this podcast. I am a fan, a listener myself. I appreciate it. It's an honor that you had me today. Thank you.
Awesome, Grace. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for everybody tuned in here to the end. We'll chat with you next time. Cheers.